everyone, welcome to episode 64 of the YarnderWoman podcast. My name is Melinda. You can find me as YarnderWoman on Instagram and Ravelry. We also have a Ravelry group for the podcast. Just search YarnderWoman podcast in the groups tab. And thank you very much for joining me today. It is Wednesday the 30th of August 2017 and I'm really looking forward to catching up with you again. Have you been enjoying yourself since we last saw each other? I hope so. I hope you've been getting lots of knitting time and have had lots of yummy food and drinks and just generally a lovely time. So thank you again. As I said, if you are new, if you are returning, everyone is welcome. I've got lots of goodies to show you today. So without further ado, I'm going to have a little bit more of my coffee and then let's go and broach the subject. So this little cutie is much deeper red than I think it was showing when I was doing the close-up. The colours were blowing out a little bit, but I think you can see her lovely from here. This was made for me as a custom order by the wonderful Danny of Little Bobbins, who has the Little Bobbins Etsy shop and the podcast, Little Bobbins Knits. It was several years ago, so I'm not sure if she's still making brooches. At that time, she had some fox brooches in her Etsy shop, and as I said, this was a custom order, and I asked her to do it with sort of a Harley Quinn, the character inspired colours. That's why I've got the red and the black and then the grey diamond because she has some diamonds on her costume. And I just love it. It's so cute, you know, as if you've ever seen, let alone held in your hand, work by Danny. Her craftsmanship is just amazing. So I very much love this little lady. And I'm very, very happy to have it. So, as I said, I'm not sure that Danny is doing brooches, I'm sorry, so I don't mean to put something out there that you necessarily can't buy, but who knows? I know at the moment Danny and her mum are working in a lot of lovely bags, so check those out. I think her Etsy shop sells out pretty quickly, but yes, loving my little fox. So, for finished objects, I have in actuality the Wonder Woman shawl. Here it is. Now let me see if I can go back here. There we go, and then it extends out to the side. I love this project. So last episode I showed you a photo of it blocking because it was still a bit damp, so I am very pleased to have it here. Isn't it stunning? This is a pattern by Carissa Browning, and it's a free pattern. She was so generous. You know, I definitely would have paid for this, but she was so generous, and it's out there for free. She also has just released a crochet version of the shawl wrap. So if that's more your thing, do go and have a look at that because that's also a free pattern. I just love it. It's knit using sort of chevron decreases here to make the W, and you do short rows to fill in these sections of the shawl. I just love it. It was such a fun knit and I am so happy with it. I love the colours that I've chosen. These are both Madeline Tosh Merino Light, which is the singles base, and this gorgeous red is the Tart colourway, which I know is quite one of their famous colourways, and this beautiful steely grey is the Composition Book Grey colour, and I had both of these in my stash, and oh, I just love it. And so the shawl, it's Wonder Woman, you can sort of see there, it's the Wonder Woman logo, so the two W's, one on top of the other, and then the extra sort of line in the wings there. I cannot recommend this pattern enough. It's so much fun, and it's a really good shape because it's yeah, quite long. I know Jill on the Skein and Able podcast was talking about it. It is really long, so she was saying she thinks of it more as like a shawl, and I guess that's it, it's a shawl wrap. Sorry, she thinks of it more like a scarf than a shawl. And yeah, because it's called the Wonder Woman wrap, so as opposed to shawl. But so it works really well wearing it over your shoulders like that, and then it's a bit hard to see while I'm sitting down and I can't really easily stand up. But yeah, then those bits hang down the front and you just sort of get the line, so it's, you know, quite subtle. But the other day when it was a bit chillier, I was wearing it sort of, you know, bandana style. I do air quotes because it doesn't really look like a bandana because of the shape, but So yeah, I've just sort of thrown that on a bit rough, so it's, you know, you can still wear it drapey like that at the front, which is really nice, and it's nice and squishy. So yes, very, very happy with this finished object, and I highly recommend it. We're running still the Wonder Woman wrap knit along in our group. It was going to finish tomorrow, 31st of August, but because I'll record again in another couple of weeks, I'll just leave the thread open. Essentially with any of my knit alongs or giveaways, even if it states an end date, if the thread is still unlocked, go for your life and enter. That's more than fine. So yeah, slight lengthening of the time period for that knit along, which means, yeah, if you want to cast on a knitted one, a crocheted one, because you don't have to finish it, it's one thread for chat, for whips, for FOs, anything. So if you have been knit along, do some posts of your progress. If you have finished, put a photo in, because anything at all counts, and yeah, you'll have another couple of weeks to enter before we draw prizes next time. Okay, my next two finished objects are gifts. So I don't think the recipients watch the podcast, but if I am staying with you in Japan, please don't watch for the next 5 minutes, okay? Yes. So these are gifts for people I'm staying with in Japan. And I've just noticed I haven't even cut the ends off this one, but that's okay. So I asked the people what they might like. I actually asked each other, so it's a couple, so I asked, you know, what would the other person like? I'm sure they discussed it, so I don't think it'll be a big surprise, but they won't know exactly what it looks like, so that's what counts. So for the gentleman of the family, he just wanted a dark blue scarf. So what I ended up doing, it's not hugely long, because I think this length, sorry, I'll get there in the end. I'm trying to get the two ends together. There we go. This is doubled over, as you can see. So it's not hugely long, but I think that length will be really good. And I just cast on, I do have it in my project notes, we'll say 300, it was something like that. 300 stitches, and then I just did garter stitch back and forth. So I cast on the length and then just kept going till I was happy with the width. So very simple, but I think that's going to be what the person's going to enjoy. And it's really nice and squishy. This is Knit Picks Swish Worsted, Knit Picks Swish in the worsted weight, and the Delft Heather Blue colourway. I'm sorry, I don't have the tag, but again, as I said, all my project details are always on Ravelry, and I always link to my Ravelry page in my show notes, which are at www.yarnderwoman.blogspot.com.au. So you can see all the details there, because I like to keep my Ravelry pages updated, because I just like to have it as a record for myself, and I figure it helps you guys as well. So yes, I think, let me count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Wasn't that fascinating to watch me do that? About 11 or 12 ridges of garter stitch. And then I did the Jenny's Surprisingly Stretching bind off just on that end there, so it wasn't too tight on one side. And yeah, as I said, pretty simple. When I was knitting it, I was a bit worried that the yarn was too rustic, prickly. And I was surprised, because I've used this base a lot, and I had chosen it because I remembered it being very soft, but yeah, as soon as I blocked it, it really softened up, and that's obviously the softness that I've remembered from previous projects. So yes, very happy with that. It was very simple, but it was lovely. When I was knitting it, I had it in this bag from a homespun house, and this one, I believe this print was from, I want to say Cotton and Steel or somewhere like that, but it was like a Tokyo range. So because this was a present, they don't live in Tokyo, but they live in Japan, so close enough in terms of, you know, it's the same country. I used this. So that was part of the Power Cow that Michelle of Actually Knitting podcast is running, the podcast Along Knit Along. So all my projects here, I don't have all the bags with me, but again, there'll be photos on my project pages. I was really trying to use podcast related bags just to support that knit along. And the next presents I have are some fingerless mitts, still with the ends not cut off, but these have just come off the blocking mats. So this pattern is the Ever After mitts. I keep wanting to say Happily Ever After, but I believe it's just Ever After, by Susan B. Anderson. And you can see that's them there. So I've just got a hole for the thumb, rather than like a gusset and a thumb thing, just a hole. So very simple. Ribbing at the bottom, straight stockinette, You then go back and forth to make the thumb hole. It's a free pattern, I'm not giving anything away that's paid for. So yeah, for 12 rounds, you just go back and forth knit and purl. Then you rejoin in the round, a few more rows, ribbing, done. Very easy. This is in skein yarn in the top drawer sock base in the sterling colourway. This is the yarn I mentioned in the last episode I couldn't find, and then in looking for something completely different, just happened to find it in one of my other stash drawers. I love the way it knit up. So, so pretty. Look at the tonality on that. Ah, so lovely. I'd love to keep these, but I'm very happy that they turned out so beautifully for a gift. And oh, the top drawer sock base is so soft. Lovely, lovely, lovely. Now, you can see here and here. So I was using double point needles for this. I prefer to knit in the round with 2 circular needles, but for this pattern you use a 2.75mm needle. I don't have those in circular, so I just use what I have because I don't mind double points. I just prefer the 2 circulars. And I also prefer chalgu needles now with the sharp metal tip, whereas my double points are in wood. So again, it's fine. They're a bit slower, but you know, use what you have. And so this was the section where you're going back and forth, knitting and purling rather than just going round and round. So this is obviously where I was, because it's only every second row is bigger, I was obviously on the purl rows. And I was being so careful. I was like pulling it tight, I was pulling the second stitch tight. Clearly it didn't work because it happened on both. And I can only imagine, because I've knit this pattern before, I can only imagine it happened then as well, and perhaps it just wasn't as noticeable on the yarn, I'm not sure. But I was hoping it would block out more than it did, but I don't think it makes too much difference, because when it's on, you know, I don't think, you know, it's noticeable as a knitter, but you know, I don't know. I'm not bothered by it, and I don't think the recipient will be. It's just a design feature. But yeah, this is a great pattern if you ever want to do fingerless knits and just something a bit more simple without the thumb gusset. I really recommend that one. So the next 2 finished objects, I'm sorry, I don't have. I just have a photo, so here you go. So that's a red and a purple version of the Kit Kat hat by Andre Sue Knits, who has the Andre Sue Knits podcast, so those are also relevant to the Pal Cow. I knit that pattern earlier in the year for the Pussy Hat movement, when they were making the kitty cat hats to send to the March on Washington, and I love the pattern then. I've also knit it previously for one of my nephews, and it's so simple. Again, it's a free pattern, so generous. You just do the ribbing for as long as you want it, stockinette, and then you just do a 3 needle bind off at the top. So there's no decreases, nothing, and then you can do some stitching near the ears, because it's sort of, you know, square, but the way your head is, the square corners come up like that. So you can do some stitching to make the ears really stand out, but I didn't do that on these ones for the YarnderTeen. And the way she wears them, she actually rolls the ribbing up, and that makes it more fitted and the ears quite small. So you can, it's very versatile. And she looks so cute in it, and it's very much her. And she's been wearing them non-stop, either the red or the purple. So I said they're both in her room, which is why I don't have them with me here. And it's about 5:30 in the morning, so I can't go and get them now because that will disturb her and wake her up. But yeah, great pattern. I used actually the same base as it's reaching over, as this scarf here, the Swish worsted weight, yes, Knit Picks. Oh, now I'm going to challenge myself on the colourway names. I'll have to link to my Ravelry page, I'm sorry. A red and a purple. But yeah, lovely pattern, very simple knit. They probably took me, you know, over the course of a day, sitting at home as opposed to a work day. Really lovely, very, very well received, and I recommend the pattern. And the other day, you may have seen on Instagram, it was Book Week here in Australia, and the photo I had on Instagram was of the YarnderTeen's costume. She wore the red hat plus a hooded cape that I knit her a few years ago, and she went as Little Red Riding Hood. And she just looked so gorgeous, as she does always, but, you know, especially so in her very funky and hand knit costume. And she was also wearing some socks, hand knit socks. And I said, oh, and hand knit socks. And she goes, well, as if I'd wear any other kind. Okay, I've just got a couple of whips on the go. I've been having a bit of an analysis paralysis in regards to my knitting about a week, 2 weeks ago probably. I just couldn't decide what to knit, but you know, I had so many shawls that I want to knit and I just couldn't decide which one. We go to Japan in a couple of weeks. So I was sort of thinking, you know, I don't want to necessarily start something big that I'm not going to finish. Do I want to try and make something to take to wear? And then I thought, this shouldn't be so stressful. Just make something easy. So what I did was I made some more fingerless mitts. So the exact same pattern as the grey ones I just showed you, but this time in purple. And these are for the YarnderTeen. She's extremely knitworthy. She loves, all my knitwear loves wearing it. It just suits her style. She's, yes, very knitworthy. I'm very happy to knit for her. So she wanted some purple ones to go with her purple Kit Kat hat. So this is them here. Now I do have the label for this one somewhere. I already took it out. This is also Knit Picks, but this is fingering weight. And this is the Duchess Heather colorway, which means that the purple Kit Kat hat is in the Amethyst Heather colorway. So they're not exactly the same, but they're very similar. So they're definitely going to match. So exactly the same, just very straight knitting. You can see the big stitches has happened here as well. Whatever. And I did with the silver ones as well, I did the bind off with a 3mm needle and Jenny's surprisingly stretchy bind off. You may recall in the last episode, I had started a pair in this same base, the stroll fingering, but the top was too tight and I haven't addressed that yet. I'm going to have to rip it out. Although I did suggest I might leave it and they might just be for someone with smaller hands. They're going to be a charity knit. So what I did, what's this base called again? I just told you, you should know. Top drawer sock is a little bit thicker. So I knew it was going to be okay in terms of the stitch count, but I did bind off with the 3mm needle just to be sure. So what I did with these is because I knew the size of this base was a little bit smaller, I actually cast on an additional 3 stitches and then still did the 3mm needle bind off, and they fit really well. So that's the first one. The second one is in progress. This is in my DPN Cozy, also from Little Bobbins Knits of my brooch. And I have to rip out something on these because when I was knitting these silver ones, on the second one, when you're going back and forth, at one point I just sort of looked down and went, I'm sure I was just at the end. How am I already back to one of the ends? And I realized I'd been probably purling along and then had knit back, so I'd just gone back on one needle. So I ripped that out and redid that. Then I had sort of mucked up my count because it's 12 rows for the thumb. And then I counted, I don't know how many times, and I got it wrong. So on the edge, I do a slip stitch just to give it a nice edge. And I just counted and counted and counted, and I was like, okay, it's 11, so I must be up to 12 the next round. Did a few rounds and then went, nope, that was only 10. And the other one was 12, and 10 wouldn't be big enough. So then I just decided, whatever, I just ripped all the way back, started the thumb again. It was fine. So the reason I'm telling you that in the middle of this one is because I've done the same thing, but not in the same context. I've just stopped at 10. So not because I got confused or in terms of my row count, anything like that. I just in my mind went, yep, 10, that's all I need to do. So Damien and I had a Blu-ray the other night, and it's a movie called Get Out. It's a horror film, really good, very uncomfortable. It's written and directed by an African-American writer and director, and so it's got a lot of race relations, societal comments as well, and then it's very creepy. So yeah, so it's creepy. It's a horror film. Yeah, I'd recommend it. It's very, very good. In terms of levels of scary. That's obviously very subjective, but yeah, it was creepy. But so, because it was creepy, I was like, ooh. So I wasn't really focusing, which is why I guess in my mind I was like 10, yep, good to go. And then I've done a couple more stockinette rounds and then realised, it's not 10. So at least I realise now, because now I can rip back. But I just haven't yet because, you know, I moved on with my life. I'll get there in the end. But I do want to have those finished by the end of the month, which is tomorrow, so I should move on that because I want to enter them in the Pow Cow because I am using a bag by Love Sockwool of the Love Sockwool podcast. It's a cute fairy tale bag. And so yes, I want to be able to put those in the finished objects thread. So they will be ready to show you in the next episode. So the next whip is also for the YarnderTeen. As I said, she is very knitworthy. So when she was wearing her little Red Riding Hood costume the other day, and as I mentioned, she was wearing hand knit socks, which she loves, and she has quite a few pairs, but they were purple, and purple's lovely. But she was wearing a red cape and a red hat. And I said, how is it possible that you don't have any red hand knit socks? So I thought I'm going to have to address that. I had some yarn already balled up. This is Gnome Acres in the Sparkle Gnome blend. And the colourway is Ultron. And you can see all that lovely stellina and glitter. So this was balled up because I used this as part of my Find Your Fade wrap. And I believe it was the second colour I used. And if you're familiar with that shawl, you use more as you go. So I believe I'd used approximately 30 grams of this ball, which should mean I have enough for a pair of socks, because I looked back in my Ravelry pages on some other socks I've knit, and I think I usually get a pair for about 70 grams. So what I'm going to do, because I've got, you can see two ends here, I'm using the center pull and the end of the ball, and I'm just going to essentially try and knit them concurrently to not get any imbalance and to have them hopefully perfectly match. So I weighed the ball beforehand, and I've sort of weighed after I did the first ribbing, so I think I'm on track. What I'm going to do though is do a contrast heel just to be sure, because that way I'll be able to utilize as much as I can of this one for both the leg and the foot. Then if I do run out, I can just use the same color as the contrast for the toe or anything else left in the foot. So I think that will be fine. I'll probably do a gray contrast, but I haven't found the yarn yet, so I'll sort that out later. So as I said, these are for the YarnderTeen. I'm a little bit jealous because as they're knitting up, I'm loving how the yarn is looking, and I wish they were for me, but that's okay. I will still see them in the house so I can appreciate them there. So as you can see, it's almost coming up in single colour stripes, which I just think is beautiful. So the colours in it, there's the grey, the red, and then there's sort of a purpley colour. I'll try and find a good bit where the colours have sort of, you know, come together. So really beautiful. I cast on 68 stitches for the ribbing, just a 2x2 ribbing. Then I decreased down to 64 because I think I thought I'd found my perfect numbers for socks, but I've been finding sometimes my socks have stretched a bit by the end of the day, so I'm wondering if I should go back to 64. And in looking at my notes for a pair of socks for the YarnderTeen, I noticed I had actually done 60 on the leg for her once, but lately I've been doing 68, same as mine, and they've been okay, so I'm just going to try 64. On that pair of socks where I'd done 60 for the leg, I'd then gone up to 64 for the heel and 68 for the foot, so I think I'll still do that. I'll just do 64 all the way down and maybe increase to 68 at the foot, and that should be fine. But yes, loving, loving, loving. I noticed I dropped a stitch yesterday. I think I noticed about when I was here. No, sorry, other way around. I think I'd noticed up here. So I just increased by, I think I make one left because that didn't make any, you know, gap or anything. So I've increased back, and I'll just pick that up as much as I can and then just weave it in at the back because it was too far gone for there to be room to pick it all the way up. And I was at work in a teleconference, didn't have any stitch markers, so yes, a paper clip. I will put a proper stitch marker on just so that that's something totally closed up, but I thought that was a pretty good improvisation. This is the second one. I've also dropped a stitch on this one, so, you know, good on me. Not as far on that one yet, but we'll keep keep going, as I said, concurrently, and yes, so pretty. Loving, loving, loving. I definitely would like to knit myself some socks, and I think this would look really lovely in like a wrap, not a wrap, like a neckerchief or something. I think this colourway would be beautiful. So we'll see. All my yarns from the Find Your Fade are still just balled up where I left them essentially. So I would like to use them up, maybe for socks or some other projects, just to, you know, use them up, get them done. And yeah, loving this. I do find that a lot of my yarn choices for projects lately come from what yarn is already balled up and ready to go, because it tends to be that I need to start a new project at some not inopportune moment, but a time when I don't have time to wind anything. So these I grabbed, this yarn I grabbed when I noticed the stitch count was wrong on the fingerless gloves, and we started the film, and I'd said, can we pause? I need to go and get something. So I ran and grabbed some needles and cast on the socks, because I thought, you know, I like to knit when watching any kind of film, but especially when it's a horror film and I'm tense, I needed something else to focus on. So yeah, and these are living in my Wonder Woman bag that was made for me by lovely Josie, and I love Wonder Woman, and the YarnderTeen is a Wonder Woman, so very appropriate. So I mentioned earlier the Wonder Woman wrap knit along that we have going, and we also have a red along going. I'll also leave that thread open just for another week or so and announce that prize next time. So anything that you're knitting or crocheting or sewing, anything that has red in it, pop it in the thread. That one's also a single thread for whips, FOs, discussion, anything. So get in there. The more you participate, chat, show photos, whatever you like, the more chances you have to win, and I'll let you know next time. Also next time we will draw the prize for the 3rd Podiversary giveaway. Thank you so much to everyone who's entered. The prompt for that is to just tell me something you like or that you would like to see on the podcast. I've been so touched by some of the lovely comments in there, so thank you so much everyone. We've got some great prizes for that. We've got YarnderWoman podcast stickers. You can get these on redbubble.com. or you can enter and try and win one. For that, we've got this yarn from Circus Tonic Handmade with these 2 minis that go with it from Space Frog Yarns. There. We've got this amazing bundle from Daydream Yarns, which is the Mystical Creatures mini set. We've got this adorable bag from Little Skein in the Big Wool. And we've got a copy of the beautiful shawl pattern, Sorrento Shawl by Masha Ibuki. So do go and enter that if you have not already. It's, as I said, for the 3rd Podiversary. I will have some prizes, of course, for the Red Along and the Wonder Woman wrap, but I'll show those to you next time. And also remember, we still have the year-long charity knit along going. So anything that you make for charity in any form, knit, crochet, sewn, anything can be posted in there. I think we must be due for a prize drawing very soon, because I tend to do them as ostensibly quarterly, but I'm not sure where we're up to. So next episode I'll have a look and see about that. So a couple of people at work knit, I believe it's the Mother Bear pattern. The same, if you listen to the 2 Knit Lit Chicks, they run a Mother Bear collection. So I believe it's a similar or the same pattern. But they are knitting these teddies for a collection for a charity here in Perth. And what they do is they send secondhand wheelchairs overseas to 3rd world countries where people with disabilities have, an even more difficult time. And so they send, mostly for children, so they're sending a wheelchair, and they send a teddy and also a blanket. So here's a photo of one of my colleagues doing a big drop-off of Teds to the charity. And you can see in the background of the photo, there's shelves just filled with crocheted blankets. So yeah, these 2 ladies are knitting machines. The amount of teddies they get through is insane. So yeah, really good fun and lots of great products going there. I myself want to get into some more charity knitting for sure. I think doing some more hats, particularly the Kit Kat hat pattern, I think that would be really fun to have as an option to give to people. I also want to start knitting some, they're called twiddle muffs, and they're made for people who have dementia when they're in a more progressed stage of the disease. these twiddle muffs. So it's a muff, so like a cylinder, so the hands can go in. But the idea is that you knit it with different textures, different feels. You can put bobbles, buttons, things like that. Because in the later progression of the disease, all types of dementia, people can get fiddly, and so it's good for them to feel stuff, and that tactile response can be really good for them. As I've mentioned on the podcast, not for a long time because we don't need to focus on it, but I did announce when the diagnosis came through. Darling YarnderMum, who you all love, she very sadly has Alzheimer's disease. At this stage, she's still very lucid and, you know, living on her own, as you see her on the podcast and photos. You know, very sadly, she'll eventually get to a later stage of that condition. We recently had a doctor's appointment and got some more details on likely timeframes. So, yeah, I don't want to focus on that, but I thought I'd let you know because I know you all love her. And we'll definitely be having her back on the podcast very soon. That was something a lot of people have said in the third podiversary giveaway thread, that they love it when YarnderMum's on. So I will definitely get her back on because she loves coming on. She thinks it's amazing that so many people around the world know her. So yes, I'm not making her a twiddle muff at this point, but I think making them for other people who are at other stages of that disease will be a really nice thing for me to do. I think it'll give me, you know, with these things we can feel completely helpless and we can't control anything, but being able to do that might give me some sense of this is something I can do and this is a way I can help people. So I did actually place an order for some bulky weight yarn on Knit Picks. The other day they had like a flash sale, 20% off if you spend $100 or something. So I went through and fortunately a lot of the yarns I wanted to buy were all already on sale. So they were 20% off, then I got an additional 20% off because I only took it up to 100. So that was really good. So when they arrive I'll show you and I'll get knitting on those, and maybe we'll have a knit along again, or it can just be part of the charity knit along. So yes, any charity knitting or sewing, making anything, pop it in that thread. It's a really inspiring thread to go and have a look at, even if you're not able to contribute at this time. I know everyone's cheering everyone on, but yeah, it's lovely to go and have a look and see what people are making. Some lovely acquisitions to show you. First off are these adorable earrings. I will wear them for you in a future episode. I have a particular outfit to wear with that I'm thinking of. Now, if you look, sorry, I'll hold it still. That looks like a knitting needle, doesn't it? Because it is. These are made from vintage upcycled knitting needles. Aren't they amazing? So wonderful. So these are from Needle Soup. So Needle Soup on Etsy. She's in Australia on the other side of the country, in the Blue Mountains. And yeah, she gets vintage knitting needles and creates jewellery from them. And she had just a post of some new stock, and I got in touch to ask her to do a custom listing for me of these gorgeous ones because I just love the colours, the white on the end of the red. So beautiful, beautiful products. And she also sent some bonus things. These are stitch markers with the ends and the tips of knitting needles. Aren't they fun? So much fun. And then these as well, a wine glass keeper. Keeper? Keeper. So, some of these may be looking familiar because we did have a giveaway from Needle Soup maybe last year or the year before, and I actually have a necklace and a brooch from her as well, and then we had, I think, a brooch for the giveaway. So if these look familiar, that's why. So I'm so pleased to have some more things to show you from her, and we'll be using some of these goodies for a future giveaway. So do get onto Etsy. I'll of course link in the show notes. Go and have a look because just, yeah, as well as amazing knitting themed jewellery, it's great to be seeing upcycled products being used, so it's really good for the environment as well. So for my birthday, YarnderMum very kindly said that I could buy some yarn online because I'd seen the particular hand dye I'm about to show you was knitting up this gradient set into a So Faded sweater, or jumper as I would call it here, and the colours just blew me away, and you'll see why. Red speckles, red fade, red gradient, and it gradients with purple. Perfect. So this is by Fibre Lily, and she is a Australian dyer, That's the Etsy shop there. I'll of course link in the show notes. Fibre Lily Boutique. And I hope you enjoy that crinkling sound, because I always do when I hear it on podcasts. I just haven't taken them out because I want to keep them pristine. So colourways we have here: Velveteen, Sweet Peggy, and Georgetown Tea. So as I said, the project that I saw these knit into was the So Faded sweater, and dear Isabel of the Fluffy Fibres podcast sent me that pattern as a birthday present. So perfect present of the pattern, birthday present of the yarn, so perfect. I'm not sure when I'm going to cast it on, not straight away because as I said, Japan's in a couple of weeks, so I won't start it before then. But yeah, I can't wait. I'm so happy to have a red based gradient. I think it's going to be so much fun. So I've been listening to a lot of audiobooks lately, which has been lovely. Last episode I mentioned 2 books by Haruki Murakami, which were A Wild Sheep Chase and Dance, Dance, Dance. I then found out, as I mentioned then, Dance, Dance, Dance is the sequel to A Wild Sheep Chase. But I then found out there were books 3 and 4 in a series, so that was a bit annoying. And it's funny because I first read those books 20 plus years ago, so the fact that I didn't know that till now is interesting. But anyway, so I got the audiobooks of books 1 and 2, which were Hear the Wind Sing and Pinball 1973. Now, as I mentioned with Haruki Murakami, his writing style, sometimes things are a bit odd and don't necessarily always match up. So in listening to those first books 1 and 2, it didn't massively impact that I had read them out of order, if that makes sense. So there's the 2 of the characters are the same throughout all 4 books, but it's not, it wasn't like I suddenly went, oh my goodness, or anything like that. So it was fine. If I was to start them again, I'd do them in order, but it was fine to listen to them out of order. I must say I wasn't really in the mood for that kind of book though, so I really wanted to listen to them as soon as possible though, while the books 3 and 4 were fresh in my mind, just to gel up anything that was a link. So I did really enjoy them, but I just wasn't quite in the mood. So what I have been in the mood for is more sort of mystery thriller type things. So I read a book called Black Eyed Susans, and let me just refer, the author was Julia Heberlin. Sorry, links of course in the show notes. That was really good. That was set in southern states of America, so the narrator did what I think was quite a good job at the accents. I think someone else had commented on the reviews that the accents were good, so I think they were genuine. But yeah, that was really good. That was a thriller with a very good twist as to who done it. That was very good. I just yesterday finished Sometimes I Lie by Alice Feeney. That's a relatively new book. I think it's only come out this year, and that again is a mystery thriller. That it's told, this isn't giving anything away, this is the opening sentence, is that it says, there are 3 things you must know about me. 1, I'm in a coma. So the book's told in different parts. One is with the main character current, while she's in a coma, what her thoughts are, and then it goes back in time, but jumps all over, so you find out bits of the story as you go along. So very clever, very intense at times. There was a great twist about 3 hours before the end of the book, so I really recommend it, except for the very ending. It ended with this big da-da, I looked over, and I won't go into any detail because I don't want to spoil anything, and then it finished and I didn't get it. And I was quite annoyed at myself because I thought, come on, work it out, it's got to make sense somehow. But I don't get it because this thing that they announced doesn't make sense. But they're obviously trying to hint at something. So I thought, I'll just go online and see what other people think about it. No one else seems to get it either. So I think one was Goodreads and one was another reading site. There's all these people going, can someone tell me what does XYZ mean? What is with the ending? So I was like, good, it's not just me. But annoying because I really want to know what this ending is, what it means. It didn't spoil the book, everything was wrapped up and there was enough other, reveals towards the end. But yeah, I'd really like to know what that last little bit in the ending means. So if anyone reads that book, Sometimes I Lie by Alice Feeney, and then wants to send me a personal message and we can discuss our thoughts, please do that. And hopefully it's a newer book, so hopefully as more people read it, there might be more discussion online. I think in one of the forums, someone was saying that they didn't want to state what they thought it meant because it hadn't been released in all countries yet, because it's an English book, as in from the UK. And so it may not have been released in the US or Northern America either at this time or at least when that review was written. So we shall see. So yeah, if you do read it or know about it, send me a personal message. Don't put it in thread. We don't want to spoil anything for anyone. But yeah, very good book though. It was very intense, very good read. There was, I will say there's, I put a trigger warning in for anyone. It's a female character and at one point she is assaulted in a particular way. I don't want to specify here because I don't know who's listening. I don't want to do any triggers here. But yeah, if you're concerned about that, send me a personal message and I can let you know as well. But yeah, so I'm at a bit of a loss now. I'm not sure what book to read next, so I'll probably just have some podcasts for today. Not just podcasts. I mean, I will only have podcasts today as opposed to a mixture of podcasts and audiobooks. So yeah, because I'm really in the mood for these sort of thriller mystery type things at the moment. So I'll have a look what else is on my wish list on Audible. If you do have any recommendations though, do let me know. I'll see if they're on Audible. I am looking forward on the 1st of September to the release of the book Slow by Brooke McAllery. I've mentioned her before. She has the Slow Home podcast and also the Let It Be podcast. And she was my first interaction with the whole slow living movement. She lives over on the other side of Australia, actually in the Blue Mountains as well, the same as where the needle soup knitting jewellery comes from. So it must be a great place to be. Yeah, so this is her second book and it's the first one she's had as an audio version. So I pre-ordered it as soon as I was able to, and I believe it is released this Friday, the 1st of September. So I think the release date is for Australia, New Zealand, 1st of September, and then other parts of the world a bit later in the year. Definitely North America, because I know she'll be possibly doing a book tour next year. So keep an eye out for that. So yeah, I think that will definitely be on my reading list for this weekend. But yeah, if you've got any other sort of mystery thriller books that you think are worthy, do let me know in the Ravelry thread. Okay, well that's all we have for today. I'm going to go and make another coffee and then head off to work. I have a seminar today, so it's a bit of a different work day. I'm not sure if I'll be able to knit or not. I do like to knit during seminars and conferences, but it just sort of depends on the format and who's running them. So I will certainly take my knitting with me and fingers crossed, we'll hope for the best. Have a lovely day, whatever you are up to. Thank you so much for joining me. Do hop along to the Ravelry thread, enter anything that you are eligible to enter. Have a chat, it's great to hear from you. And until next time, happy crafting. Bye bye.